Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. This is one of our mini series that we've been showcasing this month on Black excellence, which has been the theme. Today we are accompanied by a group of men leaders, Black male leaders in our community who will be sharing and answering a series of questions through just a discussion. I want to thank our African American Faculty and Staff Association for putting on all of these events to just tell the history. Special thanks to our interpreter for letting our voices be heard. So I'm going to jumpstart this, and we have an hour and 15 minutes with these gentlemen, and I'm excited, and we'll just keep letting people come in and we'll move forward. I'd first like to introduce Dr. Jamail Carter, who is excited for the opportunity to join this dynamic panel showcasing Black male excellence. Dr. Carter brings over 20 years of work experience and a decade plus in higher education. Dr. Carter is well-equipped higher education executive and industrial organizational psychologist. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Industrial Organization Psychology, a non-terminal Master of Science in Industrial Organizational Psychology, and a Master in Business Administration. He has worked in the areas of instruction, student services, institutional effectiveness, HR, and workforce development. His undergraduate degree is from CSU Long Beach. Where he graduated cum laude with a major in film and electronic arts and a minor in English. At CSU Long Beach, he also graduated with a university honors program specialization, was honored by being a Ronald E. McNair Scholar. Dr. Carter's graduate coursework was completed at both University of Laverne and Align International. He currently resides in Beaumont, California with his spouse, Rolanda, and their daughter, Ellie. Thank you, Dr. Carter, for being with us. Our next panelist is Tyrone Roderick Williams, appointed as the CEO of the Fresno Housing Authority in November 2021. Tyrone is a catalyst for positive change and innovation, as well as an industry leader in organizational management, financing, and project implementation. Having spent the past 25 years successfully leading multi-million-dollar large-scale revitalization initiatives totaling over $1.7 billion. Williams brings extensive experience in affordable housing, holistic and comprehensive urban revitalization efforts, community development, and much more. His background includes work in the for-profit, nonprofit, philanthropic, and government sectors, with development activities at the forefront of neighborhood transformation efforts in Boston, Houston, Atlanta, and Sacramento. Williams considers diversity, equity, and inclusion foundational core values that permeate his leadership style. He is a native Texan and is passionate about leading efforts to expand housing, education, health, and equitable economic development opportunities in underserved neighborhoods. He received a Bachelor of Architect from Prairie View A&M University and a Master of City Planning degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and a PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. Thank you, Tyrone, for being with us. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Our next panelist, Dr. Daren Miller. For the past 33 years, Daren has worked as an administrator, counselor, and adjunct professor at numerous campuses in the Fresno metropolitan area. Born in West Fresno, he attended Lincoln and Easterby elementary schools before being bused to Tenaya Middle School. He graduated from Roosevelt High School in 1984. Passionate about education from an early age, Daren has earned 5 college degrees from Central Valley Institution. Most notably, he holds 2 master's degrees and a doctoral degree in educational leadership. Dr. Miller credits his family for inspiring his lifelong commitment to service. His parents, the late Reverend Dr. Harry Miller and the late First Lady Bessie Miller, were longtime Fresno residents and leaders in the community. Together, they led Fresno Temple Church of God in Christ, located in West Fresno, for nearly 20 years. Dr. Miller is the father of 2 adult sons, Aaron, who is a retired veteran of the U.S. Navy, and Kylan, I hope I pronounced that correct, a student at Presentation College in South Dakota. He is also the proud grandfather of Kennedy, who's 17, Aiden, who's 9, Ace, who's 5, and Amir, who's 2. Thank you, Dr. Miller, for being with us today. Next, we have Mathew Grundy. Deputy Mayor of Fresno, Mathew Sterling Grundy, is responsible for implementing Mayor Dyer's vision and initiatives. He works closely with the mayor and his staff to crystallize the One Fresno mission, both within the walls of City Hall and throughout the community. Recognized for his entrepreneurial spirit, creativity, and passion for building organizations, Mathew has expertise in organizational development, real estate, finance, and capacity building. Most importantly, he has a genuine love for people. Before coming to City Hall, Mathew was Habitat for Humanity Greater Fresno Area CEO, a position he held since 2015. He helped the organization improve housing conditions for 28 times the number of families it had served on an annual basis prior to his arrival. Nationally, Mathew has helped lead strategic visioning for 1,200 habitat operations across the U.S., while Mathew's leadership has led to the expansion of building homes and hope with families across 2 counties and 4 countries. He is focused on seeing his local community thrive. Mathew and his wife are foodies who love a good meal. He enjoys cooking, reading, singing, playing board games, and taking family trips whenever he can. Thank you, Mathew, for being with us today. Next, we have Dr. Imamu Tomlinson, physician, CEO, and author. Dr. Tomlinson is Chief Executive Officer of Vituity and President of the Vituity Cares Foundation. Prior to his appointment as CEO in 2017, he served as Vituity's president. As a former regional director of the Sequoia region, he led the creation of one of Vituity's first multi-hospital, multi-specialty integrated networks. Dr. Tomlinson also served as a member of the Vituity Board of Directors from 2012 to 2016. He is a former chief of staff for the Adventist Health Central Valley Network, where he continues to practice as an emergency physician. He previously served as medical director for Adventist Health Hanford and Selma Emergency Departments, which received Vituity Site of the Year distinctions. Dr. Tomlinson also spearheaded an effort to create the network's Department of Emergency and Diagnostic Medicine and later served as its chair. In his role, Dr. Tomlinson oversees Vituity's 300+ practice locations, focusing on clinical and cultural integration and strategies that improve patient satisfaction and drive operational efficiency. The Mid-Valley Emergency Nurses Association named Dr. Tomlinson the Emergency Physician of the Year in 2006. He also received a Vituity Distinguished Service Award in 2008. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology from St. Lawrence University and a medical degree from the University of Cincinnati. He completed his residency at Miami Valley Hospital in Ohio and is board certified in emergency medicine. In 2012, Dr. Tomlinson earned an MBA in healthcare administration from California Coast University. And outside of his work at Vituity, Dr. Tomlinson is devoted to making a difference in his local community through the 24/7 Foundation, which works with kids in the Central Valley youth to inspire mental toughness, athletic competition, and resilience through basketball. Thank you, Dr. Tomlinson, for being here with us. We're happy to have you today. And last and certainly not least is our very own Derrick Johnson, who is our Associate Dean of Athletics and will also be the moderator. Derrick Johnson took the helm of the program at Fresno City College in July 2023. He came to Fresno City after spending 2 years at Middlesex County College in Edison, New Jersey, as Director of Athletics and Recreation. Boasting over 20 years of athletic administration experience and leadership, Johnson has continued the overall success of the Fresno City College athletic program, compiling over 15 conference championships and 2 state championships in just 3 years. Johnson, a Trenton, New Jersey native and graduate of the University of South Carolina, Aiken, where he earned a bachelor's degree in journalism, mass communications, with a concentration in public relations. He also earned a Master of Sports Science degree from the United States Sports Academy in Daphne, Alabama. Currently, Johnson is set to complete his education doctorate degree in global sports leadership from East Tennessee State University this May of 2023. During his college career, he was a gifted student athlete as both a writer for the Pacer Times newspaper and as a standout baseball player. He was named to the NCAA Division II Peach Belt All-Conference team in back-to-back seasons. In addition, he was selected as a major league draft pick by the Florida Marlins organization in 93 and 94. In 2008, he was inducted into the Ewing High School Athletic Hall of Fame for the past accomplishments in football and in baseball. So thank you all for joining. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Dr. Lataria Hall. I'm the Vice President of Student Services here at Fresno City College, and I will turn this over to Derrick, and thank you all and all those who are in the audience for participating today.
Good morning to you all, and thank you, Dr. Hall, for those great introductions. As I told our panelists, my voice is slightly raspy this morning, so I'm going to try and fight and get through this. So that means, panelists, you got to do all of the talking. And we're going to keep this loose and dialogue style. So what we're going to do is stay in the same order, and I'll make sure we keep that order that Dr. Hall started with the introductions. So we're going to take a deep dive into this, and we're going to start off with the first question to each panelist. Let's try and keep our answers as short as you can. Obviously, I'll chime in if I think we have some winded folks on there, but know that we appreciate all of your comments and all of your experience in answering these questions. So let's start off with Dr. Carter.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Carter. What does it mean to be a Black leader, and how have you handled or overcame racisms in your experiences?
I think what it really means to be a Black leader is being authentic and unapologetically who you are. I think the second part of your question is how have I overcame racisms? I would say early in my career, I think one of the things I was afraid of is Jamail is a very ethnic sounding name. And there was a stint in my life and in my career that when I would apply on my resume, I would put J.E. Carter because I didn't want to be discriminated against. But I think with maturity, I came to the understanding that if there was an organization that would not hire me because my name was Jamail, that's probably not the place I would want to work at. And so I think when you're looking at being a Black leader, it's imperative that, like I said, you're unapologetically who you are, and you're also willing to help those who are coming up after you to get to where you're at and also surpass you. So I think that's what's key to being a Black leader.
So Dr. Williams, Jamail said, be genuine, unapologetic, and reach back. What are your experiences, and what does it mean to be a Black leader for you, and how have you overcame those instances?
Well, thank you, Derrick. You just gave me a doctoral degree that I did work for. Tyrone, Roderick Williams will do just fine. But speaking of names, Jamail, you can't get more ethnic, so to speak, than Tyrone. So I've had to deal with that my entire life from a professional standpoint. And I agree with you, people who wouldn't be open to having someone in leadership named Tyrone would generally be someplace that I wouldn't want to be. But what I believe for me, leadership really means being able to guide and move in directions that are positive for our people and positive for the organizations that we work with. So that's always been an essential element, is what am I bringing to the table through my lens that moves people and organizations forward to achieve their maximum goal or benefit. And I've had an incredible challenge with discrimination. Discrimination rears its ugly head in many different forms. It's not always quote unquote in your face. And so I've had to learn how to navigate. I've had to learn how to take a lick and keep on ticking. I've had to learn how to go home and talk it over with my wife so I could go back the next day and not go postal on someone and keep it professional. And it happens over time. I would hope that we would be at a point where we could, all of us could say, that's not something that, we are familiar with. But unfortunately, even today, it is very real. It is, and it continues to be an issue for many of us in leadership. And we've got to learn how to navigate it and keep moving forward.
See, this is what I like. Dr. Williams, he kept it real. For some of you young folks out there going postal, if you want to know what that means open that can on somebody, but he kept it professional. So Dr. Williams, thank you for those comments. And Dr. Williams said he experienced many forms and it comes in many different forms and he had to learn to navigate. So Dr. Miller, tell us about your experiences as well.
I think that's very important. What Mr. Williams talked about is the navigation that you must go through. Racism unfortunately part of America's DNA, and it needs to go away. But as lots of other elements that goes on in our society, they're here to stay. And so how you navigate through those is very, very important. The way that I've overcome this and have been able to deal with the racism that I still today face is by becoming confident. I'm as educated, as learned, as experienced as any other element, any other person in this world. And I've worked very hard at doing that to make sure that I'm not surprised by anything that society throws at me. One of the mottos that I have is, you tell me I can't, and I'll show you that I can. And, for me, a no answer a lot of times is even better for a yes answer. Than receiving a yes answer, because a no answer just tells me that I need whatever it is I came up with, whatever obstacles in the way. I need to do a little bit more research, I need to do a little bit more homework. Maybe it's a matter that I don't have the right team to be able to navigate through whatever it is that I'm going through. And so a no answer, a lot of times people get dissuaded and turned off to it. I've been able to use that as a springboard for moving forward. But I just, you tell me I can't do something, I'm telling you now that I'm going to find a way to get it done today or tomorrow. And so that's kind of my navigating way of being able to overcome the obstacles of discrimination and injustice that I faced in my professional career.
Mathew, you're up. Talk about your experiences. Tell us how you've navigated those isms throughout your career.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. So glad to be here. It's great being with such a great group of guys and gals here on this call. I like everyone else here probably have experienced a degree of racism. It's impacted my life directly and profoundly. A few of those that come to mind are I've lost financial inheritance because of racism. I lost a best friend. Was killed due to racism. The first gun I ever had pulled on me at the age of 9 was a result of racism. So, those things stick with you. Those things have the ability to change your perspective, your view on life. And for me, you asked my opinion on how I've overcome those things. To me, racism is a symptom and of a root cause for me of sin. And for me, the way I have personally overcome it, Mr. Johnson, is by knowing the overcomer. And for me, his name's Jesus, and he has helped me navigate these. And I think every ism is a result of sin, and that's really helped me keep my head in this lot of terrible times and troubled challenges. So,
Dr. Tomlinson, I don't know if you're gonna beat that one.
No, I'm not trying to beat it. I am excited to write down all these answers. I'm looking at all the other great leaders on the panel here and learning a lot. I think that's the key. As I think about the racism that I've experienced, I think the key is really to work together. I think that so much we try to do things on our own. We try to make sure that we overcome racism by ourselves, and we have all these different things that impact us, and we don't pick up the phone and call each other and help us get through. Whether it's your spouse or whether it's the other leaders on this call, we all have to make sure that we work together. I think maybe one other piece of it is really understanding it. We talked about opening up a can of, whatever, when you experience racism, you actually have to get very analytical and really look at what's happening to you. When people are challenging you, when people are saying you can't, they're saying you can't because they don't want you to. So really to step back and understand that and know how to navigate it, not out of anger, not out of fear, not out of sadness, but out of intelligence. And so I think those are the two things that I think are super important to connect with each other in the community and make sure that we're not fighting this by ourselves, even though you may have an individual fight. And then secondly, to make sure that you navigate it intelligently and not just go with your first reaction.
I'm gonna switch back, and first of all, let me thank Dr. Ari Smith. I don't know if you all can see this. Dr. Ari Smith just brought, I don't know, one of her students just brought me some tea and a bunch of bags of lozenges. So that's what I'm talking about, support right there. Thank you, Dr. Ari Smith. I'm gonna throw this back at Dr. Tomlinson because he left on a good note on how to navigate it. So I'm gonna say, listen to this question. We know that institutional inequities exist throughout the nation in employment overall, and especially in leadership roles amongst Black professionals. Can you please tell us some of the ways that have helped you stay motivated and engaged and continue to strive your role as Black leaders? And how do you remain authentic and true to yourself as you stay engaged? So again, how do you stay engaged? How do you stay true to yourself and just motivate people?
Well, I think, someone mentioned being genuine. I think that's the first step, is to understand yourself. I mean, you have to do a lot of introspection to understand yourself. I showed up to this panel with a t-shirt on for a reason. That's who I am. I'm a former athlete and I'm proud of it. And so being who you are unapologetically, I think, is the first step. I think for me to stay engaged, what I've noticed is that mentorship has been a big thing for me. Mentorship of the youth, mentorship of other leaders, trying to get people to go through the journey in a better way than you went through it. I think that's really the key, to make sure that you're bringing people along. If you have more people that you're bringing along, you feel less alone in the way you approach these problems.
Great answer. I'm going to shift to Dr. Williams. I think you have a lot of experience, and based on your bio, I think you might be the eldest here. So I want to get that eldest experience wisdom coming out of Dr. Williams. Tell us what you think. You're muted, Dr. Williams.
I've had some incredible mentors for me. I could not have navigated a lot of the places that I've had to navigate if I didn't have other, particularly Black men, who understood the challenges that I'm going. And mentors come in all colors, shapes, and forms. So I'm not restricting good mentors to only people who are Black or any other person of color. But I do think that, having mentors who understand, it's one to have mentors who listen. It's a whole nother thing to have a mentor who understands exactly what you're going through, exactly how you feel, and to be able to counsel and guide you through that. As a result of that, I've really committed my life to mentoring others who are coming behind. I don't consider that something that's just a nicety. I consider it an obligation. There is safety in the multitude of counselors and wise men and women, and to surround yourself with that, in my opinion, has been one of the key elements to me being able to navigate that. And I support others who are doing the same thing.
So Dr. Carter, tell us about how you stayed motivated and engaged throughout the racisms, and also how you remained authentic to yourself, authentic and true.
Well, I do think they're definitely right with the mentoring and the introspection. I think that is critical. I know this past December, I found myself ill and on the verge of burnout, and remembering my why was definitely important for me to come back into 2023 motivated and engaged in the work that I do. And so working in higher ed, for us, it's about our students. And so in December, I was ill, very, very ill. And, you know, I had, there's a faculty member here, one of her assignments is she has students in her class send emails talking about their experience here at LASC, and hearing their words in terms of how our counselors and our faculty and our staff truly impacted and transformed them reminded me why I got into higher education. And so I have the benefit here working at LASC, where we're the only predominantly Black institution, as well as a Hispanic serving institution in the state of California. So I am working with individuals that look like me, that come from shared experiences as me. And it really keeps me engaged that, you know, if we're going to truly change society, it's really making sure that we're creating passages and leaving a legacy with those that will come behind us. And so starting and remembering the why is important for me.
Mathew, you're in a leadership role under the mayor in the city. I'm putting you on the spot. Tell us how you navigate those here in the Central Valley.
Yeah, you know, thanks for the question. In terms of staying engaged and you know, to me, it starts at home. We talked about my role, but I think we're talking about Black men, Black excellence. And for me, staying engaged and impactful, it starts as a Black husband and Black father. I think that's the realities that some of what we see in our community. We have to stand in the right position. And so for me, I have a beautiful Black wife, 6 beautiful Black children that I'm raising, and being present in their lives is paramount. And then comes the work, as you mentioned. I think, you know, committing myself to work and being committed to work that's aligned with our calling is really important. I appreciate Dr. Carter's comment around the why. And I think understanding really what your role and your purpose is and your greater calling and being committed to that work is key. So at home and at the office, so to speak, that's how I'm staying active and authentic.
And Dr. Miller, now you were bused to school, you're from West Fresno. I mean, you're an administrator, you're a counselor, you're here in the Central Valley. I mean, give us some of that experience here.
So let me clarify real quick. I was born in West Fresno, but I grew up in Southeast Fresno. Very similar, but just I want to make that distinction because I know I have some colleagues on here from both areas, and I don't want to be misrepresenting. But for me, it's all about the evolution of learning. I am an epistemologist at heart. And so that's homework for those of you who don't know what that is. But I'm always seeking understanding and knowledge for whatever it is that I'm engaged and involved in. And the way that I do that is by staying uncomfortable. I always put myself into positions where I'm, you know, it doesn't feel necessarily right. Maybe I wasn't invited, but I invited myself to this particular club or this discussion. But that's how I define learning. And I think that a lot of us, what we do is we wind up getting pigeonholed into our own comfort zones, whether it be behind our curtain of ethnicity or our gender or being an athlete, being a former athlete. We always want to be comfortable. But I have learned that it's best for me to be able to do what I'm doing now as a mentor, following up on the legacies of the mentors, the mentoring that I received, to stay uncomfortable. And so I hold memberships in women's organizations, different ethnic organizations. If it's something of interest to me, whether I'm invited or not, you may wind up looking up and seeing me if time avails itself. And so that's what it is about me, is the process, the never-ending process of learning is what I try to ascribe to.
So, you know, there was, as I'm listening to everybody, there was one common ground that we talked about, that you all talked about, and that common ground was mentor. So tell us some mentors, and we're at about the halfway mark of the session. So let's take 1 minute on this. Tell us about your mentors And how did they help you get to where you are today? And how did you discover that mentoring was an integral part of success? Currently, we see some youth actually rejecting being a mentee. So let's start off with Dr. Carter.
I think the earliest mentor that really showed me what was possible would have to be an early supervisor of mine, Dr. Mathew Isaac. And I was working in his department, and I was going to graduate school. It was the first job I had in community colleges. And I know as I was finishing up my PhD, he pulled me to aside and truly let me see positions that I now hold, that they were possible. He planted that seed that later germinated. And I think when you're looking at mentors, I think the best of mentors are able to allow the mentee understand what is possible. Because I think sometimes we close ourselves off to possibilities until someone speaks life over us or speak possibilities over us. And once they declare that something is possible, then we believe that it's possible. And then we start to go after what they said that we can achieve. And so I will say, when I mentor people as well, I tend to take that same philosophy that he approached me with, and letting people know, if it's something you desire, you can have, but also letting people see what they're capable of becoming. I think that is something that's critical.
Dr. Miller.
Yeah, I feel as I start to think about this, I'm starting to age myself because a lot of my mentors now have just recently passed. And so I guess I'm getting a little long in the tooth myself, but other than my parents, Terry and Bessie Miller, who God blessed me to be their eldest son, beyond that, I had a tremendous mentor when I was in high school that introduced me to politics and being involved in student government and service. And that was from a Caucasian gentleman that was from Taft, California. And those of you who are here in the Valley have probably heard horror stories about Taft, California, where they used to have a sign that says, excuse my language, "Don't let the sun set on your black ass." And so this was the gentleman who introduced me to service as a ninth grader going to Roosevelt High School. Got me involved unwillingly into politics and student government, those type of things. Transitioned it with me going into education 33 years ago. My first boss, Columbus Craig, who is getting older now, was a fraternity brother of mine who got me in there and took me to introduced me to all types of avenues that goes along with education. Took me to places where I should never have been as a young up and start educator. And so I owe a lot of tribute. We just laid to rest or had a memorial service on Saturday for my first elementary principal, Verdell Newsom, who was I was blessed that for the first 5 years of elementary school to have a Black male principal, which was a unicorn for a period of time here in the Valley. And so just going back and understanding and realizing that I've been very blessed with the individuals who've been in my life, and now to pay it forward in the roles and capacities and the things that I'm engaged in and involved in now. Mentoring is huge and is a valuable part. And it kind of disappoints me a little bit that the mentees don't understand the value that goes along with that.
Mathew, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, mentors. One of my most profound mentors in my life was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Green. He attended a prestigious organization that my friend Dr. Tomlinson down there is wearing on his shirt, UCLA. Now, I won't hold that against him, nor did I hold it against my mentor, because I'm a USC grad. But he was and we're bitter rivals, but he made such an impact on my life. And really what it boiled down to is, I think what it boils down to for most folks, that we all need mentors. Frankly, we all need mentors. And a lot of times what we know is truth is that we can't be better sometimes until we see better. And so we need folks in our lives that are showing us something that we don't have arrived at a place that we have not arrived. Dr. Green, bless him, he's in his 80s now, he's in his mid-80s, and I still look up to him. One of the things that he really taught me and instilled in me is that every person has value, every person. And every person deserves our best. And that's really been the driving force behind this thing that's over my shoulder, this one Fresno vision that the mayor and I have as administration, is that everyone in the city should have an opportunity to thrive and have opportunities and access to just do well. And that's led to programs that we've launched, like our Youth Jobs program, frankly, that's focused on, has a very strong mentorship component, where we're hiring young people that are marginalized and underserved and disadvantaged to get city jobs and careers and be prosperous. And so I think when I just quickly reflect, seeing better leads to being better oftentimes, and having the opportunity to invest in each and every person and give them our time for great value. And that's what I know I'm committed to. And I know these gentlemen that I'm sharing the stage with are committed to.
So I want to keep it moving. I'm going to hold on to the question, but Dr. Tomlinson, I want you to answer this question, and Dr. Williams, I'd like you to follow his answer. So, and I think this is one of the most crucial questions that I'm going to ask today. In what ways would you suggest students of color, especially Black students, develop leadership skills while in college? I think that's a very crucial question as to why we're on this panel. Everybody else be ready, because I might call you.
Yeah, that's I'm getting some feedback there. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that the key to being a good leader is listening. I mean, I think that if you look at the best way to become a leader in college, it's really to kind of just look around and digest what's going on around you. I think at many times we jump to a quick answer. I'm an emergency physician by training, right? I got to get the answer in 2 minutes, but sometimes I need to shut up and just listen. And I think that that's where students sometimes get the impression that they need to go in and know everything and know all the answers. I think the key is just really listen and take it all in. One of the things in the Black community that I see that we don't spend a lot of time on is because we have been sort of oppressed, frankly, right? We tend to gravitate towards each other because it feels, as Dr. Miller said, it feels safe. I want to be around my people. But if you really listen and look and evaluate a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures, you can see where they're being successful, and you can pick up leadership traits from them. And then you can pick and choose. You find ones that work for you. You find ones that are authentic to the way you want to be genuine, and you use those leadership qualities to then advance your cause.
Dr. Williams.
All right. Well, the most impactful members, other than my pastor, were people that I connected with in college. I saw people who, like Mathew said, had a standard that in some ways intimidated me, but seeing excellence intrigued me. And so I was deliberate in reaching out to people and saying, I'm in school, this is what I'm doing, but I would really like to be able to get to know you. I see you leading, and I'd like to, could I just schedule a lunch, and I've got some questions that I would like to ask. And out of that came multiple mentors for me during college. So sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone. It's intimidating sometimes to walk up to people who you admire, who intimidate you with their excellence or with their knowledge or with their achievements, but you've got to move past that. Leadership, that's one of the core elements of leadership, moving out of your comfort zone and doing what's not comfortable, but what may be necessary. And so I found that, the college years are some of the best, because we know you're just getting started. We don't expect you to be experts. So the expectation level on your part is really just to be clear when you have conversations about the issues and items you want to discuss. But I would encourage you, one, get involved, because if you want to develop leadership skills, you've got to be active in organizations or in activities that give you a chance to follow, but also give you a chance to lead, because we always need folks to volunteer, and you need to step up, raise your hand, and then execute in as excellent way as possible. But I see this as maybe one of the prime opportunities of your life at this phase. Let me tell you, eagles can recognize eagles even when they're young. And so if you've got it, other leaders and mentors can sense things that you may not be able to sense. And now is a good time to be able to exercise that opportunity if that presents itself.
Great question. So this is I want to touch on something because I want you all to hear something he said. Being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And that's a great way to put things about being leadership and really progressing while you're in college. I want to move on. We got about 20 minutes left, but I want to get this question in as well. I'm going to start off with Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter, and everybody think about this question because you probably can go deep, but again, limit your answers to about 2 minutes here. If you had to create a blueprint, a civil rights blueprint for the next generation, what would that blueprint look like?
That is a very, very good question. But I would start it with education. You know, I do think education opens up opportunities and it allows itself to lead to economic mobility, transforming one's life. So I will say that we will keep it with education. And I think from education, you know, I think you can dovetail that into many different directions. But I think without education, there's truly no empowerment, no transformation, no economic mobility. So I do think education is where you start when you talk about basic civil rights.
Mathew.
Honestly, I think, although it may be new, it said that, you know, nothing new under the sun. I perhaps would go back to the origins of the first movement. And I think what I've seen was very impactful in the first civil rights movement here in this country is the common struggle. I think that common struggle led to common purpose. And so for me, what I would focus in on, if I were to write a blueprint, it would be the unity of our people, really in common pursuit of purpose. Not to confuse that with uniformity. I believe in unity, not uniformity. I think we're all gifted and have our own uniqueness and talents and abilities, but I think that some of our common struggles, the common thread issues that we face, honestly, I just think community is really important to be an essential ingredient in the next movement for civil rights.
Now, there's a reason why I'm leaving Dr. Miller and Dr. Williams for last for a reason. Dr. Tomlinson, I want you to answer that next question again.
Yeah, blueprint. You know, I'm thinking as you say it, you know, what is the right way for all of us to interact? I think the blueprint surrounds a few things. I like what Mathew said. I think it also involves collaboration and connection with each other. I think that blueprint, talking about that first civil rights movement, happened together. The fact that we are all different, but our ability to come together and not struggle with the conflicts we have between each other. And I would also say that there's something a little controversial, and don't judge me if I say this, but I think that we bear the burden of that first civil rights movement, meaning we all want to accept everybody. And that's great and it's wonderful. And because we're asking for fairness, we feel like we have to give fairness. But I would argue that in some ways that we need to be a little more insular, that we need to focus on the Black community. We need to focus on the blueprint for this is to focus on us as individuals in an individual community. And we might have to leave others alone for a little while we figure ourselves out. And I know that a little controversial because we want to be, you know, everything for all people. But right now we have some serious problems. And I think that we need to get together and work together and fix our insular community before we go out trying to help the world fix all the other things.
I'm gonna I want Dr. Miller to go, and Dr. Williams, feel free to have a little discussion here with Dr. Miller.
Man, I hope you're not making references because we're the two oldest gentlemen in the room.
Well, think
But
about it. We're talking about a blueprint for civil rights.
well, from my perspective, I don't know necessarily if I can tell you what the blueprint will be or what the outcome will be, but I tell you what one of the main ingredients better be in that building of that blueprint is the under 40 population. So for the first time in the last 80 years, we now have more Americans under the age of 40 than over the age of 40. The last time that happened was with the baby boomer group. And the baby boomers now are passing on. And so going back to one of the previous question, I think that Mr. Williams talked about it, you got to be engaged to be successful on campuses, but also for the campuses, you have to make sure that you're engaging. And so we also have to change the mindset of the systems that we have in place. Some of those things that happened during the civil rights time and those struggles is not going to work now because we're just in a different place, a different temperament. And so we need to make sure that we're engaging, not just for their presence, but also for their ideas and coming forward, the under 40 population. And then we that are working in these institutions need to make sure that we are adjusting ourselves to meet our population, our student population, our young people's population that are before us currently.
Well, Dr. Miller, would I be correct in saying that you're saying being intentional about change within the population?
Correct. But first of all, you have to recognize that. And I'm not sure that we always recognize where we are as a country. And so I think that recognition, that knowledge, that learning process definitely has to be part of whatever the blueprint, the outcome of the blueprint is. Because if we're missing those elements, we've got old folks talking to our young folks, and that's not going to work.
Dr. Williams.
Well, I'm sensing something, as we see our next generation arise. But we talk about what was it that made one of the core elements of the former civil rights, and that is a spiritual connection. I think that, it's easy to talk about all of the Voting Rights Act and the bus routes, the bus boycotts and the sit-ins, but at the core of it all were people who knew their God and were willing to do great exploits. And I would encourage anybody who wants to be a leader, first, to be spiritually grounded and committed to seeing and fulfilling your divine purpose. That's even before there was a civil rights era, throughout our history, those individuals who moved out of the crowd and made an impact often were guided by a spiritual direction and really felt that they had the call of God that they were due. That's what will keep you in the midst of tumultuous situations, is being secure in why you're doing what you're doing and who has called you for such a time as this. And I'm challenging anybody who is looking to be a leader, be connected to the one who calls you to lead. For me, that's, God through, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But I know in whom I have believed, and greater is he that's in me than anybody else. And I know that I will be the head and not the tail, not because I'm wonderful, but because I have a higher power who pushes me past the rough points and makes the crooked road straight. So I challenge, that is a key element of being a blueprint for this next generation. We need to go back to some of the things. I'm all about moving forward. And everything that's old is not good, but some things that are foundational are essential. And I would hate to think that we would move forward with a whole nother generation who grew up and didn't know the exploits of their God. Because you're going to need them to get through some of the stuff that's ahead. You need supernatural abilities mixed with your natural abilities to handle some of the issues that we face as a people and a society.
Great answer. So I'm gonna ask this question, and this is probably gonna take us into taking questions from our audience. So Dr. Tomlinson, tell me, what is your understanding of the Black experience today let's say in an employee situation, the experience that employees have at work. And based on that experience, tell me what is and what's not working.
Yeah, wow, that's a loaded question there. I think I'm going to quote John Thompson. I don't know, you remember John Thompson, Hall of Fame coach at Georgetown, and he was being interviewed about him and Dick Cheney, and he and Dick Cheney were the only Black coaches at the time. And the interviewer said, "Hey, listen, this is great. We have two Black coaches there at the top of their game. I mean, they were leading their divisions. They were going to meet in the NCAA tournament." And John took it a different direction and said, "Listen, I don't think that's really good." And the commentator was floored. And he said, because there are so many other white coaches out there who have losing records, who have average records, who are not in the NCAA tournament. And you're focusing on the two Black coaches, and we have to have the best records to be in the game. And I think that's what I would say as an employee. I'm an employee, my board, I report to my board as the CEO. There are no Black people on that board. And I'm stuck every day waking up paranoid because I want to be the best I can be. But that's a horrible way to live, right? And so if you look at the Black experience around being an employee, we are stuck as Black men, Black people, always struggling to be the top of our game. And what we have to do is we need to work, all the leaders on this call here, we need to work in an environment where Black people can be average and be accepted and still be in the game. And I'm not telling everybody, all these students, to be average, but I want to create an environment where they don't always have the pressure to go and outperform their draft pick. So for me, that's what I would say, is that we have a lot of work to do as the leaders to make sure that people are accepted for who they are and the job they can do without the pressure of always being number one in the class.
Dr. Carter, what about you? Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, I think Dr. Tomlinson is spot on. It's to get into opportunities, you have had to have been 10 times better to even, get invited to an interview, it appears sometimes. But I think what's also critical is that we need to be at the table in decision making. And I do think when you have a diversity of people who are sitting on hiring panels that can add perspective, that's truly how you have change that occurs when it comes to hiring. Because if you have a homogeneous crowd, they'll find easy ways to discriminate candidates that look like us that are here. But if you're able to advocate because you're a part of the decision-making process, then you bring about change there.
So I'm going to move to Mathew.
Oh man, lots of thoughts on this. The employee experience. Something I'm actually knee deep in right now. It's like really been looking at the employee composition here at City Hall and our representation, both in sheer numbers and in leadership positions. And it's something that I've been working with the administration on very closely to move forward. What I know about that experience personally is, as I mentioned before, there are not many of us. That's a challenge in itself. But at the same time, again, back to my previous comment around the common struggle, I think it makes us much more resilient. I think Black folk are some of the most resilient people on this planet for many reasons. And I'm thankful to be part of the community. I think it ultimately does go back to what Dr. Carter also mentioned, folks having the opportunities, being given the opportunities. And we have to do our part to create those, to create space. I've seen recently, as I wind down the answer, I've seen recently a shift. And what I'm trying to do is help. I've seen forward progress in our community about the shift towards us and our roles in the workforce and as employees. But I think there's, while I love the name Black Excellence, and I'm all about it, I'm trying to help folks see that wording maybe differently, not that are not Black, not maybe considering that, oh, he's Black and he's excellent. No, my excellence should not be predicated on my race. How about I'm excellent and I'm Black? I just want to be excellent. and I happen to be Black. So I don't want to have a different standard of excellence, because I think some people look at us and say, hey, oh yeah, he's Black, he's Black and he's excellent. No, I'm excellent and I'm Black. I don't care what skin color I happen to be born with, you're going to know that I'm excellent. And I think that's what this whole group is striving to do.
Dr. Miller, 1 minute.
I'm in a little bit different space than some of my other colleagues. Remember, I'm a middle school vice principal, and so my employees on a regular basis are 12, 13, and 14-year-old young people. I'll share an experience with you, and I guess this would be the best example I can give you about Black excellence. I was having a disciplinary conversation with a African-American, two African-American seventh graders, one female, one male, and at the end of it, they made the comment that I wasn't Black enough. And my response, rather than getting offended, was to start to ask questions. Well, why am I not Black enough by your definition? Well, you talk funny, you use big words. I'm like, okay, so in order for me to be Black, I have to be uneducated? Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. You don't understand what we go through on a regular basis. I'm like, okay, so since I don't live in your particular neighborhood, the neighborhood I grew up in doesn't justify me and having some of the similar understandings. And so what I've tried to do in my example, because I'm building the next crop of employees, is to make sure they understand the code switching, the lifestyle switching that must take place. And what you do at home isn't always going to be allowable at a school setting. Conversely, when you get to be 18, 19, 20 years old and you're in the workforce, some things that you do outside of the workforce is not necessarily going to be accepted in the workforce. That doesn't define your ethnicity, doesn't define your Blackness or whatever. It's a matter of being excellent in the space in which you are. I think someone said that, being true to yourself, understanding what that is, and making sure that you're operating in that space. And so I, with the young people that I deal with on a regular basis, I try to be an example of Black excellence and not getting upset when negative things happen, but to ask questions and to get responses and to make them be thoughtful about what it is they're saying and not just saying things because it's a reaction, a knee-jerk reaction to something that they've been brought up with. And so, you know, it's fun. I wouldn't trade my job for any job that my colleagues have in the world. Working with 12, 13, and 14-year-olds and be able to use them and seeing them as Play-Doh and being able to impart knowledge and wisdom into them, hopefully get an opportunity to change their thought processes so that they are a positive part of the workforce in adulthood.
So this is going to be the last question before we take some questions from the audience. And this is for everyone, this is for all our panelists. In one sentence, give me advice for students or anyone wanting to pursue leadership. We'll start with Dr. Williams. One sentence answer.
Seek out leaders that you respect and learn from their walk and their journey, because it's the walk and the journey that got them to wherever you currently see them. But there's more than meets the eye to who they are.
Dr. Tomlinson.
One sentence, I would say be yourself because you are valuable.
Dr. Carter.
Start today.
Mathew.
Learn to serve.
And Dr. Miller.
Get involved and stay involved.
Great answers. So Dr. Hall, I think, do we have any questions from the audience? Is anybody looking at that chat board?
After 3 years, I'm still forgetting to unmute. I've been looking at it and I put a comment in here for folks to ask. One of the questions that somebody private messaged me is, what is the most important risk you took and why? Any one of you.
I'll go on that one. Suing my bosses, suing the school district that I was engaged in for discriminatory practices, knowing that it was going to be an uphill battle, going to work every day with a smile on my face, still serving my students while I had a 16-month trial ongoing with the litigation against my school district.
I think one of the greatest risks that I took was applying to MIT, knowing that they would have over 600 applications to fill 40 spots. I'm happy that I filled one of those spots. But if I hadn't ever applied and talked myself out of it, I never would have been able to benefit from that opportunity.
Dr. Hall, I think one of my greatest risks that I took was leaving home. I'm from Canada, so I'm an immigrant. And I think a lot of people, especially African-American, Black people, they like to stay where they are. So I would encourage people to take great risk, leave where you are, go to a different place, because the opportunities aren't limited to can be limited just where you're at this time.
Very nice. Anyone else want to take a shot at that? Dr. Carter?
I think for me, there were many positions that I applied to and took without sometimes having a background information in those particular fields or areas. And I think why it worked is because it allowed me to see that there are transferable skills. So one can be in various different arenas, but if you're using your transferable skills, then you can master maybe those things that you aren't so familiar with. So I think that is really leaving your comfort zone to try new things.
Yeah, that's all of those are a really good piece of advice. We tend to sometimes not be risk takers and want to stay where it's comfortable, and even getting our kids to go away from home, or leaving a job where we've been comfortable in for so long. You don't tend to find too many Blacks willing to step outside of their comfort zone. It's making it easy to become complacent. So I appreciate those questions. Anyone else? Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say biggest risk that comes to mind is going into politics. I mean, I think everyone knows this is not, this is not for the faint of heart. I had no desire to go into this, but I'm thankful to serve, and I'm fortunate to be in a role to serve, and I try to keep that heart. I hate politics. And so just the opportunity to serve the community really mattered to me. I think that was really a big risk. But again, going back to the conversations just mentioned, I just think it's important to pursue calling, even though you may not have had the direct experience, the indirect experience, or just knowing that you're meant to be there is important.
So they're all private messaging me. People don't want to put themselves out there. We talk about being very authentic, but it's fine. You all are in leadership positions. How do you stay motivated in times of adversity? Because people are looking to you for guidance, and the struggles are there for you as well. So how do you stay motivated during those times?
I think one of the things for me, and I think this is something that we have not covered or talked on, is because there are so few opportunities that we have to understand that we are laying the foundation for others that are going to come behind us. So I think it's easy to, when you're staying motivated, this kind of goes to, I think it was Tyrone made mention of this earlier, about not going postal when you may be feeling that way, because if that happens, then you're maybe leaving a black eye for someone else from stepping in certain roles. And so I think it's very, very critical that we understand that the work we're doing is not just for us, but for the generations after us. That really keeps me motivated.
Yeah, I would add and just say that what's keeping me motivated is knowing that we haven't arrived yet. And we haven't arrived. And I think about my life's journey and some of the challenges. I remember being a high school student, going off to college. I was homeless for 2 years, and my family and I. And I think in my present role, I think about all my neighbors that may be living in that situation or other challenging situations. And until we have arrived, this ain't heaven yet. We have work to do. So for me, that's motivation.
Yeah, for me, it's about understanding my purpose, which is grounded in service. Being a Fresno native, born and raised here, I play it back, and I want to make sure that I am giving back to my community in all aspects of everything that I do, whether it be in my professional job here as a vice principal, political jobs, roles that I've been in, whether it be in service with the clubs and organizations. I'm always grounded in my purpose of service and giving back. And so that's what keeps me motivated. And as Mathew just said, the work is never done.
Yeah, but very, interesting. I tell my staff, establish your North Star, because things are going to get muddied and there's a lot of distraction that comes. And if you stay focused and you have a goal that you're targeted on, which for me, I call it the North Star, you always remember your why. And I heard a lot of you talk about, the why earlier in the conversations. Derrick, I'm going to call on you too, because you've been moderating, but you're also a leader. How do you stay motivated during adversity?
Woo. I think one thing that Dr. Hall said is and it's her comment, is following the North Star. I think for me, there is so many people that came before me that faced harder. So some of the things that I go through as a Black male are just on the surface, although we know they're very impactful. I think about my father, who's a Vietnam veteran and was fighting for his country before the Civil Rights Act was even put in place. I think about my ancestors who were shipped into the low country of South Carolina and on a plantation, and some of the things that they had to do to survive. So again, I think it's about how well you're grounded and how well you know yourself, and also continue to learn yourself. I've had to learn myself over and over again in so many different situations. And not only have I had to learn myself, I've had to shape my leadership philosophy to the different places that I've been. The isms of life impact us every day, every minute. They impact us sometimes when we don't even know it. So again, I think you have to be able to put on those distractors and quiet the noise. I think you have to find that space, that quiet space for yourself to process things and not react first. I think, my pastor, he always says, find this place that you really like and that you really would love to go to on a regular and just spend time with yourself. I think that's one thing that helps me a lot as well.
Great. So we have about 6 more minutes. And I don't think I see anything else, but there was a question that we had on our.
There's one more, Dr. Hall.
More?
Cindy Dunn. She wrote, who do you see as the strongest current national Black leaders that have any of the qualities, passion, demanding equality, putting others before self, that are similar to those of Martin Luther King? Any of our panelists?
I certainly appreciate that question. I think it's important to have folks that are visible, who are taking the lead, who are in easily recognizable positions of authority and influence. So thank you, Cindy. I'll give you my own 2 cents. I also think we're at an era where sometimes we're constantly looking for that one figure to carry our cause. And for me, I think and I believe we can be less dependent on that one or two figures, but that each of us can, take up our own role and take up the charge as a community, and move forward. So I appreciate that question. So I'm not necessarily answering in terms of who we see, but I just want to encourage us that it's each one of us. It should be a part of the answer and the solution.
Yeah, I just maybe want to take it a little different direction, Dr. Hall. I think there's a gap. I think Cindy is dead on. I think that I appreciate that, Matthew. I agree with you that I think in spots, obviously, I just met you today and you're already my leader. You're my hero. But I think there's a gap there. And I think that for those who are listening, and we talked about, Dr. Miller talked about the under 40 crowd, about that middle school crowd, not, my 24/7 foundation, those kids, the leaders are going to come from that generation. And so I think that we have to do whatever it takes to foster that generation so that we get that next Martin Luther King. But right now we have a gap. And what's interesting about where we are now is we're all fighting for our lives in our own small worlds. And we're making sure that we're fighting so that others can come up underneath us. But we do need that one national figure that isn't Jay-Z, that can really, really carry that weight, carry that water, so that my son, who's in Iowa in the snow, can look and say, wow, there is a Black leader and I respect him. And he's really delivering on what that next generation of Black leadership should be. So, that's, I hate to be negative, but if you all are listening out there, you have an opportunity to be great and be that next Martin Luther King, and I will follow you.
I think if I can add on, and I'm in total agreement with what Dr. Tomlinson just said, but I think it dovetails into what Tyrone said earlier about not going back to the roots of that spiritual person. I think what has happened is after Martin Luther King and some of the early civil rights activists, I think there were charlatans that crept into prominent positions that used things to enrich themselves, but at the same time they sold out the neighborhood, they sold out the community, they sold out the work. And I think that is why we have that gap. And I do think when we get back to our roots as a people, where we're coming together, that next generation can elevate where we go as a group of people. But I think right now there were charlatans that came in and really prostituted the Black experience.
If I may add on to that real quickly, also, Miss Cindy, remember, Dr. King's legacy has grown. He went into the civil rights movement not willingly. He came in begrudgingly and then accepted his mantle. We as an African American or the Black community at that particular time also wasn't very receptive to his leadership, and it has grown now with his death and the things that we've been doing over the last 60 years to honor him. And so I agree that the next Dr. King, the next Malcolm X, the next leadership in African American the community is coming. I don't know where. I think that we're seeing examples of it with my colleagues here, but I am comfortable and confident that our next role of leaders, not just leader, not singularly, but plural, is on the horizon and it's coming.
So I want to be mindful of the time and wrap up, but I sincerely appreciate and thank each and every one of you for engaging with us for the last hour and 15 minutes. It's been a pleasure having you all. I'm gonna take a script from Mathew where he said, I'm excellent and happen to be Black. Thank you all for your leadership and the roles that you play. My brother, that's so awesome to see our leaders who happen to be Black men doing it and who can be a model and inspiring to others. Derrick and Mathew and Dr. Miller and Dr. Carter and Tyrone and Dr. Imamu, you all have been just inspiring to so many of us today, and I want to say thank you. I also need to make sure I give a big shout out to Susie Nitzel, who put all of this together. She worked in the background. You had an opportunity to meet her earlier. She made this all happen on Zoom and virtual, and I asked for it and she just ran with it and she communicated with you all. So again, thank you. I will be taking your biographies and plugging them into our website. I know some of you have some other information. Dr. Tomlinson, we did not get a chance to talk about your book. One of our questions was recommending a book. I know that you have a book that you recently published. If you can please drop that in the chat, it's on leadership, so others can go and look into that. So again, thank you all and have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you.